You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron. Now here's your host, Ethan Hristodoulou.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Greeks Gridiron. I'm Ethan Hristodoulou, and today, as the preseason continues to roll on, as we make our way through week one of that preseason, we're diving into rankings for positions, starting with one of the most highly contested, maybe not so much about who's within the top 5, but as far as a top 10 is concerned, looking around the field and seeing just how many varying degrees of lists I have seen, I figured I'd dive in, break down my top 10 quarterbacks going into the 2025 NFL season. So as always, make sure you comment down below. Let me hear from you all. How do you rank the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL? Who should be at the top? Who barely makes that list? Honorable mentions, all of that, fire away. Let me hear from you all. But we'll start first, of course, with a couple of honorable mentions. I'm not going to get into too much about them, but two people I heavily considered for this list that just missed the cut, that are probably somewhere in that 11, 12, 13 range. Jordan Love and CJ Stroud. I really like what CJ Stroud brings to the table. Unfortunately, that sophomore slump did hit, but there's a lot of other just issues going on within Houston itself. But I am a firm believer of CJ Stroud and his game and what he's able to bring to the table. I do have some very serious concerns, though, regarding what that offensive line is going to look like this year. So that is probably one of those things that if it goes well, CJ Stroud maybe could jump one of the bottom guys on this list here. But as of right now, I'm a little bit shaky as to what we might or might not get from CJ Stroud. Jordan Love, the other guy, listen, tough season last year for him. The year prior, obviously really exciting. I think injuries more so than anything really just kind of rocked Jordan Love's season as a whole. The way the season started for him, I think just kind of spilled in throughout the entirety of the year. Who really knows just how healthy Jordan Love, aside from the Packers themselves, just how healthy Jordan Love was throughout the duration of last season. And I feel like when you start the year off on the wrong foot with the ankle sprain that he dealt with and just how quickly he made his way back, something tells me there was a little bit more to what that season wound up being for Jordan Love as a whole than anything else. I do think he has a real good opportunity this year to bounce back into the top 10 conversation because, again, a couple of seasons ago, the way he lit things up in Green Bay, all the more reason as to why I think there's plenty of untapped potential with Jordan Love. But last season, not a great one, but it kept him right outside that top 10. Now, moving into the actual top 10 itself, there was a lot of consideration for a number of different things here. Again, feel free to comment whether you agree, disagree. Let me know what you're disagreeing about. I'm sure there's going to be plenty. I'd be shocked to see more agreements than disagreements with how this list goes. But let me hear what your list would be and why. At number 10, I'm starting with Justin Herbert, and that's probably a lot lower than a lot of people would have him. But for me, I am kind of getting off the Justin Herbert train, at least for the time being. I have been a very big Justin Herbert guy, literally since he was drafted by the Chargers. However, at the end of last season, and last year was really good when you look at just the numbers and the totality and the way he played last season, 504 passing attempts, resulting in 23 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. I mean, it was a good season for him. The pass attempts obviously being much lower than what we were accustomed to from seeing from a guy like Justin Herbert. But at this point in his career, I have yet to see the magic that we saw from maybe those first couple of seasons when he was really showing off the flash and the upside and the traits and the ability that he brings to the quarterback position. Yes, there is a wow throw here and there that we see every single season from Justin Herbert, but to this point, he has not thrown more than 30 touchdowns since 2021. We are going into the year of 2025. So if he doesn't eclipse it again this season, and I understand the offense is a little bit more run focused and you could point to a lack of weapons, and there's a number of different nuances that can go into it all. I get it. The Spanos family, for what it's worth, maybe not necessarily up for ownership of the year awards, but I feel like at this point right now, I'm a little bit more on the bearish side with Justin Herbert than I have been in years past. Do I think we could maybe see a good bounce back from Justin Herbert? Not bounce back, but I mean just kind of a correction, I guess you could say, after what was a disastrous end to the season last year. Because again, last year was really good for him overall, don't get me wrong. But as it currently stands right now, we just have not seen the wow that we really got from Herbert when he kind of had to carry the offense for the Chargers those first 2 seasons of his career. The numbers have dipped. And again, there's a lot of factors that go into it all. And if you want to talk about like pure raw talent alone, Justin Herbert probably is higher on this list. But when you think of the production that comes along with that talent, I'm fine with him at number 10. If you think he should be like 9, 8, 7, something along those lines, absolutely so be it. I think the conversation is there. But as somebody who has just been so high on Justin Herbert for the literally majority of his career, up until basically the way last season ended with the interceptions he was throwing left and right against the Houston Texans, I think at this point right now, still a top 10 quarterback, but he's sitting at the bottom of the list for me. Moving into number 9, and again, there's a lot of conversation that can be had, especially with the bottom half of this list, I would say. I opted to go with Matthew Stafford, and I've got to say this. If this was a week ago when I was making this list, he's probably a spot or 2 higher. But after finding out about the injury that but just the lower back issues that he's dealing with, and he obviously has that disc, or the aggravated disc that's going on in the back, I'm kind of speaking from personal experience here because I don't really talk about my outside life on the show whatsoever, but as somebody who myself is dealing with 4 compressed discs and a bulging disc myself due to just not taking care of myself in the gym and what have you over the duration of my 10 years or so of working out, it's kind of a concern to me because it's something that, depending on the day, you feel good or you don't feel good. And yeah, you could sit there and fire away cortisone shots all you want to maybe mask the pain, but sometimes that works and sometimes it does not. And back injuries are tricky because it's one of those things that, depending on the day, and for Matthew Stafford's case, depending on the beating he might be getting, depending on what the defense is that he's going up against and how aggressive they are at getting after him, this is one of those things that could really hurt the season for him. Despite the injury stuff, Matthew Stafford, in my eyes, one of the best in the game right now, though, at what he does. It shows in his numbers, and when you go back to that big moment against the Vikings last season, when he got Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp back, we got the real version of Matthew Stafford, despite the advanced age, air quotes, for those of you that are just listening here, that Matthew Stafford is currently playing at. Going 8-2 from that return game of Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp and on with the Rams. And again, the passing numbers just flying through the ceiling, kicking off with the 4 touchdowns he threw there. Multiple games with 2 touchdowns or more going throughout the season. I think he had another 4-touchdown game even further down the line in that season as well. I feel really good about the way this Rams team is built, both offensively and defensively. And I think Matthew Stafford is the perfect guy to help push this team all the way to the playoffs, maybe even another divisional win and then some. But as it currently stands right now, the injury concern does have me worried. I think, injuries aside, Matthew Stafford is still one of the best to sling it currently in the NFL as it stands. But there is a little bit of a concern and a dark cloud kind of airing over Los Angeles, I would say, as it currently stands. And funny enough, we got the 2 LA guys at the bottom of this list here, both for varying different reasons. But I think Matthew Stafford, if he's healthy, could maybe even inch himself up this board a little bit further come season end, but I like him sitting at the number 9 spot. Moving into number 8, we have ourselves Jared Goff. Now, this is another one. Again, could say maybe he belongs a little bit higher. I think you could say that about a handful of guys on this list, but then you got to move guys down, and I don't really know if I'm willing to move some of those guys. The career resurgence of Jared Goff in Detroit is obviously one of those awesome things that happens in the NFL from time to time, and watching what he's been able to do under Dan Campbell, and of course when Ben Johnson was here as well, it kind of felt like when he was initially traded, he was tossed to the Wolves, and it's been nothing but like literally 90-degree angle trend pointing upward for Jared Goff. Now, the big thing for me, this is now going to be the first time in Jared Goff's career, and at the time we didn't realize this about Ben Johnson, but we certainly found out. This will be the first time in Jared Goff's career that he's not going to have an offensive mastermind leading the way for him. Obviously, Sean McVay during his time in LA, and then, of course, coming into Detroit. Nobody knew it when it was first initially happening, but as the time went on, clearly Ben Johnson, one of the best offensive minds in the NFL, he's going to be taking a massive transition here. Now, there's a chance that John Morton is the same kind of, we didn't know it until it actually happens sort of situation where he is the next great offensive mastermind in the NFL. Maybe that's the case, maybe that's not. However, I think with the way Jared Goff plays, he's typically very good taking care of the football. And again, this is a guy that even just going beyond last season, since coming into Detroit, racking up 13,600 plus yards and 96 passing touchdowns in these last 3 seasons that he's played for Detroit. We're not going to count that very first season here for numbers' sake, but he's boasted the second best completion percentage amongst quarterbacks last season. He takes care of the football. He's only second to Tua in that category there. He does an excellent job navigating the offense. And for what it's worth, while I am a little bit concerned about the Detroit Lions losing Ben Johnson and what that could mean for this offense going down the line, John Morton was there in that initial install of this offense as things first got pieced together. So that does alleviate my concern a little bit. Now the big question is just how much of Ben Johnson's touch and his ability to push the right buttons and make the right decisions at the right times in certain situations for the offense, how much of that are they going to miss this year? How much of that is Jared Goff going to miss this season? I think this will be a really good test for Jared Goff, who, for what it's worth, so far has adapted pretty well the first 2 places he's been. I think the ending in LA just was kind of one of those things where both sides needed to move on and Jared Goff needed a fresh start, but he's done a great job recapturing the glory of, you go back to like that 2017 season he had where he went shot for shot with Patrick Mahomes during that, or was it 2018 season, whatever that year was, where him and Patrick Mahomes went shot for shot on that Monday Night Football game where they had the all-star officiating crew and everything, and the Rams took down Kansas City. There is a lot to be said about what Jared Goff is able to do, and I think you cannot make this list without having him at least on there. I do have him a little bit lower than I'd like to because I'm kind of semi-anticipating maybe a hair of a regression or so, minus Ben Johnson here. I could be wrong on that, but that's just kind of where my head is at with him towards the bottom of the list. At number 7, and this is someone I wanted to have higher, but after heavy consideration, I decided I don't think I could push him much higher than this because he does have a litany of talent to work with, and it's only gotten better this offseason. Baker Mayfield, a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, a guy that in my eyes is a franchise quarterback. Say what you will about his early days in Cleveland and maturity issues and things like that. Whatever your opinions are on that, you can save it, because the way I see it, Baker Mayfield, from day one getting drafted by the Cleveland Browns to the ultimate day that they decided to let him go and instead go with Deshaun Watson, and look how that's played itself out, Baker Mayfield has been a franchise quarterback, and I've always felt like he was absolutely wrongly punished by the Cleveland Browns. Go figure. Sorry, Browns fans, but go figure. Punished by the Cleveland Browns for somebody who is willing to play through a serious shoulder injury and try to fight and bring Cleveland to a playoff berth. I will never understand how that whole thing worked itself out, and I don't think anyone ever will, because I don't think there was sensible decision-making being made when that was decided upon. But Baker Mayfield, only Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson have thrown more touchdown passes than he has since joining Tampa Bay, and Baker has led the Buccaneers now to back-to-back playoff berths and divisional wins in the NFC South since getting in there. Like I said, I'll never understand why the Browns decided to let him go. Him going into Tampa Bay was awesome. Now, there is obviously offensive coordinator change happening, and it'll be something that we have to keep an eye on for Baker Mayfield and this Tampa Bay offense. But with just how good the offense is, the skill players that you have, Mike Evans is still there. Bucky Irving and Rachaad White are a fantastic 1-2 punch at running back. And then, of course, you have the rookie Emeka Egbuka, who has been getting rave reviews from everybody. And when Chris Godwin's eventual return happens, this offense is gassed up and geared up to be a top flight unit going into this 2025 season. And Baker Mayfield is a gamer. He's a guy that is willing to play through the pain and fight for his teammates at every given moment possible. Baker Mayfield's a dude. I would love to have him higher on this list. The only reason I don't have him higher is because I literally cannot, because of how I feel about the guys I have in front of him. But love Baker Mayfield's game, love what he brings to the table, and he rightly belongs within the top 10 QBs of the NFL. Moving into number 6, a guy who would not have been on this list last season because he was not in the league, Jayden Daniels. I am very high on what Jayden Daniels brings to not only the Washington Commanders, but what he brings to the NFL as a whole. I'm honestly only worried about like that potential sophomore slump that guys tend to go through depending upon just situation and how the offense is operating around them, or maybe just everyone defensively has tape on him now and they're able to actually figure him out. That being said, and there's also like the handling of the Terry McLaurin situation that I assume gets resolved soon at some point prior to the season starting. Maybe it's one of those like down to the buzzer type things, who knows, but the way I see it, I would be kind of shocked if Terry McLaurin is not still a Commander. Would I also be shocked if he gets traded away? Kind of, but not necessarily. But it feels like Commander more than being traded elsewhere, despite the reports of... It feels like there's a narrative being driven by the media right now where they're trying to get Terry McLaurin out of Washington. And I kind of don't buy that. But there is a lot of noise and a lot of smoke about how unhappy McLaurin is. So we'll see. But I know Washington loves him, and it would make sense for the Commanders themselves and the front office to make sure he does not go anywhere as he continues to help a young quarterback in Jayden Daniels thrive. So those are my two concerns: a potential sophomore slump, and then of course if Terry McLaurin's not there, that's not necessarily great. I would love to have the addition of a guy like a Deebo Samuel and an addition like a Laramie Tunsil be a part of an offense that also includes Terry McLaurin. That being said, on the sophomore slump side of things, and again, defenses maybe having more tape on him and maybe having figured him out now going into year number 2, that is something that I felt like I heard people talk about all last season, where, wait till we get 6 weeks in, 7 weeks in, 8 weeks in, and then that narrative slowly started to die away because everyone was like, all right, well, we're now more than halfway through the season and Jayden Daniels is still carving it up and he's still extremely effective at what he's doing. Great decision maker and just an unbelievable performance in his rookie season, collecting damn near 4,500 total yards of offense, 25 passing touchdowns, 9 interceptions, kept the number under double digits in his rookie season. 69% completion percentage would put him near the top of the NFL. He also, of course, had 6 rushing touchdowns, no fumbles on top of that, lost as well. So did a great job taking care of the football, great decision making. I love what he brings to the table, not only as a runner, but also as a passer. This is somebody that I think it's easy to kind of forget that Jayden Daniels is a pocket passer. He can throw the football with the best of them from what he's shown from us through this first season of his career. Again, he'll have to continue to do it, but I like the dual threat ability, and I love the way he makes his decisions. It's not like one of those, I have legs, let me take off with them. It's in this situation, maybe I should take off here kind of thing with the way Jayden Daniels plays. I love it. This offense is built to succeed this year. Keep Terry McLaurin, and I'll continue to listen to people talk about how, oh, just wait till there's more tape on him. I really don't think a sophomore slump is in Jayden Daniels' future. Obviously, I could be wrong, but what this kid brings to the table is undeniable in my eyes. Moving into the top 5, though, of the NFL, this is where the conversation gets a little bit thick. I think that there is a lot of conversation about who's at number 5, 4, 3, maybe even 2. And for me, I think there is still a somewhat clear number 1 that could change based off of how this next season plays out. But at the number 5 spot, and I'm really conflicted having him here, but it's just one of those things where some of what the offense was able to do without him last season is kind of what is holding things against me. But I don't want it to sound like a slight, because Jalen Hurts, in my eyes, is, if you wanted to draw up a winner, Jalen Hurts. Somebody who led the Eagles to a Super Bowl run a few years ago, made essentially one mistake that you could point at that's like an easy cop-out for why the Eagles couldn't take down the Chiefs in that first initial matchup where it was literally just all offense, all gas, no breaks. But that being said, I think a lot of people are forgetting just how good of a passer Jalen Hurts actually is. And we need to make sure we're putting some respect on Jalen Hurts' name, because everyone talks about the tush push, Saquon Barkley's ability to run, how good that offensive line is, the skill talent that he has. And don't get me wrong, it's a talented group of guys that he's working with. That's not his fault. He just happens to play in Philadelphia, and management, Howie Roseman, they're all very good at accumulating talent and keeping them around him. That's not Jalen Hurts' fault. He can only play with who's around him. That being said, finished 8th in completion rate last season, and on top of that was 1st in completion percentage over expected at plus 6.6% for you football nerds out there. For those of you that don't know what that is, the difference between a quarterback's actual completion percentage and expected completion percentage, controlling for the level of difficulty of each pass. Jalen Hurts is a good passer. Yes. Did he not need to throw the ball as much last season? Yes, of course. Did he not need to run the ball as much last season? Yes, of course. Why? Because you had a 2,000-yard rusher in Saquon Barkley who didn't even need 17 games to hit that 2K mark. Ultimately, the reality is he's on a very good team, and anyone who wants to hate on Jalen Hurts and his ability as a passer, or just his ability within that offense because he has so much talent around him, and of course he's going to succeed, I don't really think the Eagles offense rolls the way it does last season, minus Jalen Hurts. Like, yeah, maybe you could say they still win the Super Bowl if you plug in Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, or like any of those top guys, Baker Mayfield, you could even say. Like, sure, absolutely. But Jalen Hurts makes that tush-push possible. It's not like every single team that tries doing this tush-push stuff works. It's not, the whole emphasis on him being a guy that can squat 600 pounds is a very real discussion. It's a very real fact and piece of Jalen Hurts' game and what makes him special at what he does. He makes the tush-push go, along with a really good offensive line, and obviously having to worry about guys like Saquon Barkley and other skill players that you need to account for. But at the end of the day, Jalen Hurts is a quarterback on a very, very small list of guys who've been able to make it to a Super Bowl, lose, and then make it back and ultimately win one. Yes, the team was ultimately talented last season, offensively and defensively, but not a lot of guys can say that. And on top of that, Jalen Hurts showed me before and showed a lot of people before what he is capable of in terms of carrying an offense and a team on his back. Just because he didn't have to do it last year does not mean he's not great at what he does. Moving into number 4, I settled on Joe Burrow with this one. You could maybe say he belongs a spot higher, but with the 3 guys I have above him, I just don't really know if I can put him any higher than this. If you want to say he's arguably the best pure pocket passer in the NFL, I definitely think that's a conversation. When you look at some of the numbers from him last season, first in pass attempts, passes completed, passing yards, passing touchdowns, and not only playing against his opponent's defenses, but he was basically playing against his own defense in what was just an absolute sand sieve of a unit, because Cincinnati allowed more than 34 points in 6 different games last season. No one had a better completion percentage over expected last season than Joe Burrow under pressure. What he does is it's beautiful. It's a throwback to the pocket passing quarterbacks that we don't really see too much of anymore, because there's a lot of dual threat guys these days that are more than willing to run with the football. Even if they're not necessarily considered like a scrambling quarterback, they're still athletic enough to run with the ball in their hands and take off, as opposed to maybe just like eating a sack or just throwing the football away and taking care of the ball that way. There's a lot of stuff that you don't see around the league anymore that Joe Burrow still absolutely possesses. And of course, he's got 2 extremely talented wide receivers to work with in T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. That being said, Burrow's going to probably have to make more of that magic happen this year, and I do think that there is at least a conversation to be had, because you can point at his numbers from last season and say, yes, he was first in pass attempts, first in passes completed, passing yards, touchdowns, all that stuff. He's unbelievable under pressure. Nobody was better than him last season. There is also the case to be made that a lot of those numbers are simply out of necessity, and the argument counter to that is, well, if Joe Burrow wasn't as good as he was, those numbers won't reflect that, even if it was out of necessity. So, it's a very nuanced conversation of Joe Burrow is fantastic at throwing the football. He had to throw the football a lot last season. I think both things can be true as far as stats being maybe a little bit padded, because he absolutely needed to be throwing the ball as much as he was, because the Bengals were constantly in shootouts or falling behind and needing to play catch up. That was just literally the story of their season last year. I think that can be true, but I think it's also worth noting that those numbers probably don't look like that if Joe Burrow's not damn good at what he does in spite of everything going on around him. So one of the top passers in the NFL, I do think there's a strong conversation for just purely a pocket passer, Joe Burrow, and what he's able to do at the line of scrimmage. There's a lot about his game that I really appreciate, because it's not mirrored by very many other guys in the NFL, where this is just someone that he's going to drop back, pass, and dice it up. I love it. It's a throwback to that era of quarterbacks when you think of just mid 2010s, late 2000s, where you're getting Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, guys controlling the line of scrimmage, Phillip Rivers, things like that, Drew Brees, just guys that'll drop back and pass and not necessarily are going to take off with the football all that often. Even though Joe Burrow is athletic enough to do so, he can definitely just strictly rely on his ability at the line of scrimmage and what he's able to do when the ball is in his hands in the pocket. Coming in at the number 3 spot, and listen, I spent a ton of time between number 2 and number 3, because I have a lot of love for all 3 of the top guys on this list here, and I think depending on the week, you could have a good, strong argument in case for why either one should be above the other. But as it currently stands right now, I think one of the big things with Lamar Jackson that is lacking from him that keeps me from having him above either a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes or either one of those guys or anyone else is just that he needs that signature victory. And I understand wins are not a quarterback stat, and the way last season ended was devastating. I had Baltimore winning that game, and there was a long period of disbelief for me that Baltimore could not come away with a victory in that game and that David Andrews dropped the pass that he did. Absolutely, there is a piece of me that still to this day, as we head into the 2025 season, wonders, could Baltimore have given Kansas City a run for their money? Could Baltimore have maybe made it to the Super Bowl instead of Kansas City? Could they have given the Philadelphia Eagles a far better matchup in that Super Bowl? All of those things I think about from time to time. I do think that there is a realm of possibility that some of those things are true and that Baltimore does maybe make it and maybe even at least compete with the juggernaut that was Philadelphia. Like, I would have loved to see Philly and Baltimore with the styles that they play offensively and both of those defenses, as good as they were, go head to head and go shot for shot. It would have been awesome to watch. That being said, that's not what happened. And that's kind of the big thing for me because Lamar Jackson's season last year, incredible. You see the way things were set up. Derrick Henry comes in. You have one of the most threatening backfields between Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry and what they could do offensively. And it was hyped up to the moon, and it delivered. Derrick Henry had an unbelievable season. Lamar Jackson won first-team All-Pro, and he had the exact season he was supposed to have last season statistically. 45 total touchdowns, 4,000-plus yards passing, 900-plus yards rushing. He had 8 total turnovers throughout the entirety of the season. I mean, unbelievable year for Lamar Jackson and what he meant to this Ravens offense and just how much the offense opened up for him having a threat like Derrick Henry. You can't knock him for the fact that Derrick Henry helped him reach that level that he did last season because Lamar Jackson has shown in previous seasons that he is just that damn good. And on top of that, he had the season he was supposed to have. If he's a lesser quarterback than he is, he probably doesn't have those same numbers. The Ravens don't have the same success that they had, but they did because Lamar Jackson is that good and he played to the level he should have and then some with the talent that he was working with on that Ravens offense. A dropped pass away from us having a potentially vastly different conversation, but I need to see that signature win from Lamar. And again, I know wins are not a quarterback stat. It is a piece of the conversation. I just need to see that signature victory from Lamar when it matters most before I can put him in that number 2 or number 1 spot above the guys I have above him. And then coming in at the number 2 spot, and I'm sure the conversation will only pick up from here if you've made it this far. We got Josh Allen, which obviously gives away what number 1's going to be, but we'll get there in a second here. Josh Allen was the definition of an MVP last season, all things considered, with the offense being headlined by Khalil Shakir, who going into last season, you didn't really know what he was going to be. And James Cook had shined in spots, but he had not really been like that guy. And he ended up being that guy for them. I think he's turned himself into like their legit RB1 in Buffalo. But there was not a ton of talent to work with. And even though you have, talented tight ends and there are some guys that can catch the football pretty well, this was not an offense designed to really go against the best of them. It was Josh Allen, you're going to have to put this team on your back this season and prove your worth. And I absolutely think he did that. And despite that, he went and brought down the turnovers, accounted for 40 total touchdowns for Buffalo last season, only 6 interceptions. And essentially, the offense stops and goes with Josh Allen in Buffalo. If Josh Allen's not in the position that if the Bills don't have Josh Allen, I don't even know if the Bills are a playoff team. All respect to Buffalo fans, but I do not think the Bills are even a playoff team minus Josh Allen and the cape he is able to throw on his back and carry this team. That being said, the only thing I want to see from him now is a legit Super Bowl run. That's the only thing I want to see from him at this point. I know that it's not always on him why Buffalo winds up losing in the spots that they do to Patrick Mahomes or that one year when it was Joe Burrow, whoever it may be at any given moment. I just need to see that Super Bowl run from Josh Allen. That's the only thing I need to see from him before I'm willing to put him into that number 1 spot. As it currently stands, Josh Allen is damn near in a league of his own with the way he plays and just how he plays and how he can flip that switch and turn it on and lead a team to victory. I just need to see the final run towards a Super Bowl and it not end in the divisional round, in the conference championship. Even if it's a loss in the Super Bowl, like I need to see that. I need to see Buffalo actually make it. And yeah, I'm not thrilled that it comes down to Josh Allen having to throw on the cape, but the fact that he's able to do so and carry his teams as far as he has to this point speaks a lot to him as a player and what he brings to Buffalo, but also just how good he is at the position that he plays, being the quarterback spot. And then, of course, at number 1, what else can I really say? This is one of those things that I'm sure it'll be a big conversation in the comment section. Patrick Mahomes holds the number 1 spot, but I will say that the hold that he has on it is definitely getting slippery. And there is a very good possibility that it might change this year in my eyes. A battered offense led to a pretty mortal season for him last year. 26 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 3,900 passing yards. Still a really good season, all things considered, but not maybe to what we'd been accustomed to seeing Patrick Mahomes do in years past. Still guided the team to a Super Bowl, and kind of like what I said with Josh Allen and the Bills, I don't think you can just drop any other quarterback into the Kansas City Chiefs offense last season and still have yourself a team that lost 1 game when they were actually trying during the regular season, because I'm not going to count that game against the Broncos. They were not trying that game. I don't think you can drop a lot of quarterbacks in that Kansas City position with how good the defense was, in spite of all of the things happening offensively, and still get a team that makes it to the Super Bowl. You probably make the playoffs because the team as a whole is still very talented, but like there's a chance that Kansas City minus Patrick Mahomes, if we're not talking plugging in another of the top 5 quarterbacks I have in this league, or like anyone in this top 10 realistically, and you're probably looking at a team that's barely sniffing the playoffs or just not making the playoffs at all. It was not a great season for Mahomes last season, but I do still think he is like the penultimate leader in the NFL right now, where he's going to get the absolute most out of the team around him, even if he's not playing to the level that we are accustomed to seeing. And there are things that go with the way the offense produced last season that I think are worth mentioning when you consider like the loss of Rashee Rice early. He's going to be back. You also have yourself Xavier Worthy going into year number 2. I think there's a lot of potential for this offense to make a major bounce back this season and look far better than they did last season. Isaiah Pacheco was also missing for a stretch of time, and I'm hoping that maybe we see a more just rejuvenated, invigorated version of Travis Kelce than we did last season, because if you get what you got from Travis Kelce last season, that's not going to bode well for them. And I was honestly pretty surprised to see him come back this year. I thought maybe that was it for Kelce last season. So you're hoping he's reinvigorated and ready to go and maybe try to, clean up what was kind of a messy season for him personally last season, which statistically was still a really good season overall, but to the standard of Travis Kelce, it was not a great season, if that makes sense. So you got to put those things in a vacuum and really look at them when you talk about it like that. But Andy Reid's still leading the way. Mahomes still has his tight end. You're going to get guys back that missed a large chunk of last season at any given point. And as long as this offense stays healthy, I think we're getting that bounce back season. I still think Patrick Mahomes is the top guy in the NFL until proven otherwise, especially with the way he has handled the AFC literally since he got to the NFL. Other than like Tom Brady and now being taken down by Jalen Hurts in the Super Bowl with the Eagles, there's nobody that I can really sit here and argue with a straight face and not feel like I'm lying in some way or another that I can't have Patrick Mahomes at number 1. If you want to call it glazing, so be it. It's just a fact of the matter. I do think that there is a strong case to be, and this needs to be acknowledged. I do think there's a strong case to be made that Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson should be above Patrick Mahomes at this current point. I think that's a very fair conversation to say based off their production last season, as both guys won either first team All-Pro or MVP. But at the end of the day, Chiefs were the ones left standing in the AFC. So let me see somebody else from within that AFC, because the top 4 is littered with AFC quarterbacks that still need to beat Patrick Mahomes to get to the Super Bowl. And I know the Bengals were able to do it that one year against the Rams when they faced them a few years back. But since then, the whole Burrowhead thing kind of has been like a pie in the face sort of situation for the Cincinnati Bengals. So it's Mahomes at the top until anyone else in the AFC decides to tell them otherwise. So that's my top 10. Let me hear from you all in the comment section down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Fire away. Don't hold back. Let me know your thoughts, your opinions, but let me hear your rankings. How would you put the list together? Even if it's not a top 10, if it's just like a top 5 or something like that, I would love to see and hear from you all. But that is it for me, as always. If you made it to the end, I greatly appreciate it. I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.